Hi family people! Hello! I'm making this video for Mr. Uncle Chuck and Miss Aunt Carol, so they can see my model train software game. Alright, let's get started. Alrighty, so first things first, there's a really mean virus on my computer and I tried to use lots of security to get rid of it. Tried different ones. Everything I've tried so far just won't get rid of it. So, if you see the circle thing for the paintbrush, the game will actually sit still when the paintbrush is out in the world builder. So, if I zoom in here, oh, there you see. Well, that'll explain the circle thing. If the paintbrush isn't selected, then the screen just starts flickering and going all over the place, and it just goes nuts. I don't know why. Anyway, skipping over that part, because I'm just ignoring the whole situation. It's really too aggravating. So, forget it. I wanted to build the biggest yard ever imaginable, unless somebody actually imagined one bigger. But I wanted to build the biggest one I ever imagined, just for the fun of it, really. But when I was building my layout, and I come over here, there's the add ground. So, wherever you see the layout ends right now, I can put more ground and build it as big as I want. So I decided I'll make the whole entire United States in a summarized version, scaled down. The East Coast Railroad, the West Coast Railroad, and put this big yard in the middle. That's where they'll transfer all the goods. But I like, realistic concepts. Here I am. Ooh, look, my fancy hut. Yeah. I like realistic concepts, and, so I wanted to imagine why this yard would exist there. So, sorry, I have no idea what I was filming while switching the camera screen around. My viewfinder is like twistable, but you can't see it in the video. So, whatever you were watching, I was twisting the viewfinder. Anyways, this right here, this was my paper drawing. I started with this idea, concept. I said I've got a southwest railroad track, goes northeast, and then I've got a northwest, goes to southeast, which converges right here, which that'd be, even though it's fictional, that would be in Nebraska, Interstate 80, that's the interstate on the map. But everything I'm building in my fictional world is completely fictional and unrelated to the real world. So there's a town that's also a small city. It's called St. Clair. Just decided to call it that. And in order to build the yard big enough, I needed the 4 largest railroad companies to join up together. So you got Burlington Northern, Santa Fe, Union Pacific, Norfolk Southern, and CSX. Which that would be Chessie Seaboard Transportation. And that's future site of Freedom Yard. So here you have the intersection of 2 main lines. And then right here you have this open area which nobody had used for any commercial purposes. So you buy all this land right in here, and then you build Freedom Yard right there, because better commerce and faster movement of products creates more money for the economy, and if you boost the economy, then you boost the freedom of the United States of America, because it makes us a more powerful nation. And then you can share that freedom with the rest of the world. That was the whole concept for calling it Freedom Yard. So it moves your goods faster and more efficiently, and therefore boosts the overall state of the nation, because we can make money faster. Everyone benefits from that. And that's where East Coast lines will come in, and they've got their work sheds and depots, and you've got the turnaround points, all this for the East Coast side. And then on this side you've got the West Coast. All the West Coast lines will come in this side. They have an exact copy of everything on the East Coast. There's doubles of everything. And after this will be an in-game recording where you actually get to see everything really well. And this is just done with my Handycam video. And so the, oops, I lost control of it. So the East Coast freight comes into the yard, sort it out in the yard, send it straight out this side, headed to the West Coast. So you can sort and ship and send. So you can go from here, you can go northeast, let me see, northwest or southwest, and you sort it all out here, because Nebraska's in the middle. So, starting out with Nebraska. And this was what was there before the big yard was built. And the reason I had to draw that up was, oh, I'll also explain the color of tracks. See, I've got my new modern tracks here. And then out here you've got the red ballast tracks, which, I'm going the wrong direction. Where am I going? Yeah, sometimes I still have to fight with this irritating virus because he'll pull me in other directions, and then I have to go in the opposite direction he's trying to pull me in, which ultimately counteracts, and I end up, you know, sort of going straight. But, yeah, here we have the red ballast tracks, which I'll be using on the middle, and then it'll transition to the green and gray and brown for the east, and then I'll use more dry railroad bed and concrete ties, and that'll be the West Coast side. Because if I did like an actual United States layout, it would be ridiculous. I'd probably be 120 years old and I still wouldn't be finished with it. But here you have that original line, which I drew on the paper. And if I scroll back here, see, this is the original track, and then it gets split off into those brand new rails, which they look really new. And this track here, you see it's more naturally curved and aged. And then this rail has been completely cut off, so it's rusted over now. So I've used all different selections of different kinds of tracks to build different age and wear and all that neat stuff. And then here's where it breaks off from that line, and then both lines are completely out of use. And over here, they ended up getting buried when Freedom Yard was built, because it was all bulldozed and flat. The middle track that was going down the middle is broken off right there. That's all that remains of it. And then it splits off up there. Now the rest of that main line can be found right over here. That's the last remaining of that main line. And then you've got the new track which comes in. And then it connects onto there. And now you're back with the old dated track, which is wavy and bendy. And all the new lines were made perfectly straight because it was all dug up, measured, GPS, calculations, all that stuff, perfectly straight. But of course, you know, over time it'll end up looking just like the dated track. The world doesn't sit still, so the tracks will eventually not be straight, but they are brand new tracks, so they are absolutely, completely straight. And that emphasizes that they're brand new. And this is the two lines that go through the bottom of the paper. And here's where I put in the depot and the fueling port. That's where all the fuel goes to, just untold numbers of engines that you can fuel there. And to compensate for Amtrak's main line, as in my fictional world, I like to pretend like Amtrak has their own right of way. So you'll see Amtrak has their own set of signals and their own signal boxes. And the freight companies, they have a different set of signals and a different set of signal boxes. They each use different stuff. So this is where they compensated with taking that Amtrak main line and put in a whole new, brand new Amtrak main line, which you wouldn't find on the paper because it wasn't there before. So all that was put in place to service this main Amtrak station over here. And this over here, whoops, I'm having a little fit right now with the anti-computer hating virus program. Evil program somebody put on the computer that doesn't belong on there. This is going to be a Western tourist attraction. I set all the buildings out and haven't set them up yet. And here's the steam train. You get to ride a steam train. So all this will be back here in this open space. And so far we've got hot air balloons. Put those in. I got the bus parking in. And just to be fun, I thought it was a little amusing to myself that a lot of bus drivers like to park differently. I mean, some guys like to hog most of the spots. You know, these guys decide to park diagonally. Some guys are forward, some guys are backwards, some guys are inconsiderate. So, all the buses are just randomly set, just like real buses would be, randomly tossed about. And over here we've got the boardwalk park. Which, might be adding on to that. That's a fancy inn. You have to have admission through, whoops, I'm being drug over here now. Come back here. Here's the guy, little admission booth there. And this is the town. So there's a town here. But due to the tourist attraction in the park, we've got tons of hotels throughout the town. And that brought in a little bit of business. So we've got two big skyscrapers. And we got another little medium-sized skyscraper. So we got a little bit of business there. The town is just now starting to become a city. So it's getting a little bit big. Over here is my fictional Interstate 80. So we see the cars transitioning onto the interstate. It's very nice. And we've got a bridge that goes over top of the traffic. I don't think this one's not finished in this version. I actually finished this in the later versions, but this file, I used this older file so that I could fill up the yard with a bunch of miscellaneous trains. I guess I could show that real quick. So you just go here, and then you get a list of pre-made trains. You just, you know, click one and throw it out there. Now, when I actually use the yard, I actually build the working part of it, then I'll have like actual trains that I build from scratch. I'll build all the trains myself using individual cars. So in the video, if you look, you'll see the same train over and over and over and over. I just took the pre-built trains and I just kept clicking and putting more and more of them, simply so I could fill up the yard and demonstrate how the yard will actually function. As you'll see if you continue to watch the video, which I would apologize, it's quite long, but very, very relaxing. It just ended up being long because it takes such a long time to perform train operating procedures, and I cut out a lot of the even more longer than it would be parts. And it demonstrates in the video that I show an East Coast train comes in, drops its cargo off, and a set of West Coast engines pick up the train and they head west with it. Then the East Coast train will pick up a set of empties and head back east. So it's basically demonstrating the efficiency. And as far as I'm aware, I've never heard of the concept, because I took a principle that is known to other people, which is the Y switch, which is a realistic design, and it's where one track will split into three directions. But then I came up with this interesting idea where I thought, you take that concept and you connect it to another one, and then what you do is you stack them all up on top of each other so that you have rows of these things. And so far I've called it switchbacks. This is the first clever name I thought of, because you can switch back and forth. I was like, switchbacks, that's what I call them. And in this yard there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7 sets of these switchbacks. What that allows me to do, that I think makes it so productive and efficient, the reason it's called the Freedom Yard, that I named it that, is that it will allow you to come in up here in the north, and without reversing your train, you can travel completely through this yard all the way down to the south end and never reverse. All you have to do is the control master up here in the tower, he organizes the freights, sets up the route, and he will give you a clear route through the yard, throw all the switches open, and see, that's his job there. And that's what I demonstrate later in the video when you get to see actual recording of the game itself, which is done with my video game recorder. And then you get to see how I'm the master control guy, I guess. How I set up a pre-designed route. I set all the route up, set all the switches up, so that as soon as the train came in the yard, all it does is follow that route, go to its destination, leave the cargo, goes back over here, follows another route that I set up. That's where he picks up the empties. So the East Coast train heads back east with an empty coal car train, and the West Coast train picks up that mixed freight that came in the yard and takes it out west. So the East Coast train doesn't have to go any further to the west. All he has to do is come here in the yard, drop off the train, and head back east. The West Coast train picks it up and heads west. And then once he gets out west, he can grab a set of empty West Coast freight and pull it back into the yard and then send that east. You know, empty, full, whatever. But it's basically how the two different coasts will transition between each other, and they can swap their freight east and west right within a single yard. And that's the whole concept of what I was putting together. And when I'm finished, I will have a summarized version of the United States of America, where there will be the East Coast in the middle and the West Coast, and like I was explaining with the tracks and everything, different color tracks for different parts. And then once I get to where I actually paint it, which I will do the painting the very last of all, because I use these grids on here. I have this really nice grid, and that's how I put everything exactly where I want it, and it's all measured, and it's all precisely laid out according to the grid pattern that they gave me. So I can't paint it until it's completely finished, otherwise the grid goes away and you can't paint the grid back. I looked for that option and I couldn't find it, so once you paint over the grid, it's gone. So the painting will be last. And that will transition through. I'll be using stereotypical, like, whoops, I seem to have bumped the zoom. Stereotypical colors for stereotypical west, stereotypical middle, and then the stereotypical East Coast, because it's all fiction and it would take too long, and if I built the entire United States, it would probably overtax the computer thinking about all of that as well. That'd be a lot of assets to put on there. So it's going to be a summarized version of the United States. And possibly I'll have some Canada up top, because they give me like a huge assortment of foreign trains, and I might want to use some of those. Those with the electrical wires, you know, stereotypical foreign ideas. So everything's just going to be stereotyped and summarized, but it should come out really neat, and the yard will be my favorite feature of all. The other thing that will be, sorry, the string is caught on my finger. I always use a camera string, that way if I accidentally drop it, it's not going to go too far. But my apologies, it got caught just now. Eventually, what I'm going to do, this is as far out as I can zoom my layout. It's so big I can't get any further back. I might move down a little bit. Yeah, that's a good view right there. I like that. So eventually, there's going to be more layout that's going that. So you're going to have more west over there, more east over here, and then north, and then south. And then what I'm going to do with these tracks that are coming around, in hidden ways between buildings and switches and side tracks and off tracks, I'm going to put ovals that won't look like they're ovals. They're going to be really huge and not noticeable that they're ovals. So there'll be massive number of different oval tracks, and then I will click drive, tell the computer drive this train, and it will go in ovals. But they won't be, they won't be a perfect oval. It'll be all like winding here, bending, going under this, going over that, and then you won't notice it's an oval until you realize the same train just went by about 3 times in a row, and you go, hey, wait a minute. So within the scenery I will hide different oval tracks, and one of my really neat concept ideas, like when you go back to the paper drawings, and there's my earliest concept versions on yellow paper here. I have all different, that's where I was deciding the design of my yard, and that's where I put that in. And this one's a really good one, of the overall concept of the yard as I was designing it into the fictional world. But for example, let's say right here, I might take this track and I would secretly, to where you wouldn't notice, I'll put just rails with no ties. They have the option that you can just put old rusty rails down, so it looks like it's completely abandoned and completely unused. But once I've switched onto this track, the train would actually run on what looks like an abandoned track, and that would make it go in circles. So that would be a hidden oval that you wouldn't know it's an oval track. So it would look like just a normal railroad, but then there's neat little ways of hiding the ovals. So it looks like a real railroad, but it's going to be a model railroad. And that's pretty much it for the introduction of my video, and this is for my Mr. Uncle Chuck and Miss Aunt Carol and lots of other family members, and they can see my working in progress that I've been doing on this game that my mommy got for me, Trainz Simulator 2010 Engineers Edition Deluxe. Create and operate the railroad of your dreams. I'll say, there's no way in real world that you could afford to build the United States of America, not even in a summarized version. And I somewhat think that only the yard by itself is, I don't know, you might be able to buy a car for the price of building this in reality, because the size is just ridiculous. The amount of track and switches and wires and all the signals and the lighting, everything, if you put this into a realistic hobby, would cost so much money. Oops. Hold up. I don't know if you saw that thinking thing, but that virus was misbehaving on me again. Yeah, here you, whoops. Come back, sit still. Okay. There's one of the signals. I'm trying to show that it's got signals, there's the switches. So, yeah, these are all functional signals. You'll get to see that in the video too. And then, I also have these giant overhead lights that light up the yard at night. And I'm trying to get this to sit still. Sit, sit, sit. There we go. I don't play any more internet games at the moment because it is just too ridiculous to try to control things on the computer, and this is not an internet game, but still affected by the virus because it affects everything on the computer right now. And you see a lot of consists that I have built. These are just fabricated, as I said. I'll build real consists when I, build the actual thing. This is just a test run. And this is an older file. As you saw, the bridge was missing. This was before I completed a lot of stuff on the layout. In one of my more recent files, there's a lot more completed stuff, but I didn't want to have to delete all these extra trains and stuff. It took long enough just to throw things on here just for, randomly. That took long enough. because I had to make sure they didn't obstruct the route that I was supposed to be taking. And there's 1, 2, 3, about 4 different routes I have to go through to make it through the yard. And that was the whole reason that I did that, to demonstrate how the yard actually functions, and that this is like the whole reason why. So I can transition through this freight, I can go around all this freight, and I can move a train from this side of the yard all the way to that side of the yard without reversing. Never have to back up. I can cross the entire yard without ever backing up. And that's the brilliance behind the whole design of my Freedom Yard. And so that really is my introduction. And now I will send it over to the in-game video, as I do in my video editor. So long. Enjoy the in-game video right now.